Hello and welcome back to another episode of Transcontinental Overload. I'm Stephanie, your host, bringing you a little Christmas special episode. It is indeed the week before Christmas and I miss being in Germany. I crave a good German Christmas so much. This year we were meant to celebrate with my parents in Bavaria, as the last 3 years we were either in England or here in the US. The main reason being that we just moved so much over the last few years. And so we had moved from Austin to England and then back to Austin, all within a year. And then, there was just so much going on that we felt like we wanted to celebrate Christmas, just the 4 of us, like nuclear family Christmas kind of thing, and which is really nice. But and then last year we were like, well, no, we were ready to celebrate with the extended family again. But then for one reason or another, couldn't actually get there for Christmas, but decided to celebrate New Year's in the UK and had my parents join us from Germany for a few days, which was really nice. And oh my goodness, I'm so glad we did that. I'm so glad we did that because then COVID hit and everything changed. Had we known that would prevent us from traveling this year, we probably would have celebrated Christmas differently last year, but that's what happened and here we are. I'm not saying I don't love my nuclear family Christmases, our mix of German, British and American traditions, but I feel I need a real German Christmas again at some point. I think I'm just in one of those weird expat existential crisis moods. And if you're an expat, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And if you're not, then let me try and explain. So when you live outside of your home country, and you have done so for an extended period of time, you kind of develop some sort of extra traditionalist tendencies. And what I mean by this is that sometimes you just become super patriotic and proud of your native country's traditions, and sometimes you do things that you would never have done back home, but with that distance now that you just go for it, whether that's celebrating Oktoberfest or things like that I'm not a big fan of Oktoberfest, but when we were in California we had a couple of Oktoberfests and it was fantastic. And you wear all the dirndls and lederhosen and everything and go for it. And this kind of feeling hits me usually every year around Christmas. And then I start missing Christmas carols and special cookies and all that kind of thing. And I find myself humming German Christmas carols and things like that. And that would have never happened back in Germany. I think what I really miss actually is not the whole of Christmas, the whole Christmas period. But what I do miss is a proper German Christmas Eve, because it is very special. And that vibe is so very different to a British or an American Christmas. So I'd love to talk you through a typical German Christmas Eve. But before I do that, I'm actually going to read 2 blog posts I wrote about Christmas and the holiday season about a year ago. I have provided links to those blog posts in the show notes, so if you'd rather read than listen, you can do that, just follow those links. Or if you've already read them and don't want to listen to the whole story again, then you can do that and skip forward to around minute 19 and a half to rejoin this episode and listen to me talk you through a typical Christmas Eve in Germany, or maybe I should say typical Christmas Eve with my family. And for the rest of us, let's listen to what I wrote a year ago. The most wonderful time of the year, part 1. Thanksgiving and Advent. It's the holidays again. That time of year when we should reflect on the past 12 months and make some plans for the next 12. It is the time of the year when we try and finally get all the shit done that we haven't managed to squeeze in or just turned a blind eye on. I don't know about you, but those last 3 weeks of the year always feel more like 3 days. I always feel extra traditional during this month. Maybe because Advent and Christmas were such a magical time of year when I was a little girl, and even a teenager in Germany. And Christmas in England is a very special affair too, just more boozy and less besinnlich. As is usually the case with the best German words, there is no perfect equivalent in English. Contemplative, maybe? Living so far away from my original and adopted home countries, I often crave silly little things and traditions, some of which are impossible to transport over here, and which I feel my family needs to have, because it just wouldn't be Christmas without them. But while I can get a few things to stave off homesickness, it's no mean feat squeezing 3 countries' Christmas traditions into one household. Our children are used to this mix of influences, but as we all spent our childhoods in different places, each of us has a slightly different take on what Christmas is all about. What we all agree on is this: having 3 different sets of traditions means we get to celebrate longer and better than monocultural families. And even though they're teens now and there's a lot of eye-rolling and being too cool to actually show your enjoyment of it, I know they secretly still like all the things we do. At least that's what I tell myself. Starting off the holiday season, of course, is our current country's very lovely Thanksgiving. I really love this celebration as it's all about spending quality time with family and or friends without any of the pressure of present buying. This year we spent Thanksgiving in a separate corner of the world. S took E to England and F and I escaped to California and had what felt like an extended Thanksgiving, catching up with friends we hadn't seen in ages and enjoying a few days off work and school. I even went one step further and left my laptop at home, making those few days very much about personal rather than digital interactions. As soon as I got back to Austin and just in time for the first Sunday of Advent, I rushed out to get a wreath and candles. In Germany, it's tradition to have an Advent wreath with 4 candles, one for each Sunday before Christmas Eve. I make do with just one big candle in the middle. I also dragged the Christmas decorations box out of its hiding place. To be honest, I was surprised I managed to find it, as we still have a shamefully big and chaotic amount of unopened boxes in the storage room. My absolute favourite Christmas heirloom, the pyramid, came out first, and I'm delighted it's still undamaged, even after all those moves. It lives in an ancient, bent and ripped cardboard box that's still got our very first address in London on it. I know I'm a bit of a soppy old what's-it. This pyramid is a very traditional German ornamental carousel, which takes very special German Christmas tree candles. To my great delight, I just discovered that I can order these as German imports on Amazon, as my supplies have almost run out. My favourite candles are made from beeswax and smell delicious. I also treated myself to a visit to the World Market, a nationwide chain for homesick immigrants, and stocked up on German chocolate Santas, marzipan kartoffeln, little marzipan balls that look like mini potatoes. UK imported Cadbury's chocolate fingers and McVitie's ginger nuts. Then I swung by Trader Joe's to grab some American-style peppermint mini marshmallows and an advent calendar for my dog, and found that I could get German Lebkuchen and Stollen here too. These are traditional German baked goods. It seems the US has me covered, at least for now, until I find the time to bake some real Weihnachtsplätzchen. Now, these are traditional German Christmas cookies, and there are so many different types. Next on the December calendar, celebrating St. Nikolaus. On the eve of December the 6th, children in Germany put a clean boot outside their bedroom door and wake up in the morning to find it filled with goodies, courtesy of St. Nick. Typically, these include oranges, chocolates, and maybe a book or something not too extravagant. Here in the US, this concept is obviously paralleled by Santa and the stockings hung over the fireplace and filled with stocking stuffers, or stocking fillers. But I prefer putting things in actual shoes. It's so wonderfully German, keeping it real. Having teenagers, however, is seriously impacting my Christmas cheer, as I hinted at before. It's a little like having toddlers with all the attitude, the tantrums, the selfishness, just with more door slamming and more verbal punches. I know I'm super annoying trying to engage them in anything Christmas related, but I can't help it and stubbornly stick to my usual agenda whenever I can. This year I feel the need to do this even more, as this might be the last time E is actually home for Advent. This year I also feel like threatening them with Krampus on an almost daily basis. Krampus, as in St. Nicholas's sinister sidekick, who's there to punish the naughty children. This tradition is really rather terrifying when I think about it now. But when I was a little girl, it was just a normal part of Christmas. To this day, I can remember the sense of utter terror. Us kids sitting in our classroom, Nikolaus and Krampus would visit during the school day, and hearing the heavy footsteps, St. Nicholas knocking his staff on the classroom door, and then, worst of all, the horrible sound of rattling chains as Krampus crept ominously into the classroom, following his cheerful companion, a sack over his shoulder to put the naughty children in. Much to my delight and horror, I might actually get to see Krampus here in Austin. One of our finest local brass bands, the Dead Music Capital Band, is celebrating Krampus, terrorizing the children of the world during the Friday the 13th Krampuslauf at St. Elmo Brewery. Trust Austin to come up with a way to combine old traditions with beer. It's a win-win if you ask me, and it means that I'll be able to drag S along, who usually just sneers at anything Christmassy. Unless it's Christmas pudding. But more about that later. So that was part 1 of my blog post. And yes, we actually did see the Dead Music Capital Band and for Krampus night and dragged the kids along, and it was actually really fun, but very harmless. All right, the most wonderful time of the year, part 2, Christmas. One more day until Christmas now. I swear, yesterday I still had a whole week. At least I'm done with my Christmas shopping, and I even managed to send out a handful of cards. By handful, I mean that literally, so don't be disappointed if you're not getting one. I've decided not to get sucked into all the usual Christmas stress, but rather to enjoy the season and try and relax a little. I have to, as this car crash of a year simply has to end on a good note. 2020, I'm so ready for you. Oh my God, I can't believe I wrote that. Oh dear. So if 2019 felt like a car crash, then I can't even find a description for 2020. Anyway, let's see what else I wrote. But first, Plätzchen. Of course, it wouldn't be Christmas without homemade German Christmas cookies. I'm not a very enthusiastic cook, but I do like to bake, and Advent is the perfect excuse to mess up the kitchen. I'm so lucky that S is the chef and happy to take charge of Christmas dinner with all its turkey, ham, roast potato and parsnip shenanigans, and I am merely relegated to being sous chef and decorator. But the sweet treats are my domain. Plätzchenbacken is a huge Advent pastime in Germany, and we always had heaps of Plätzchen when I was growing up, as my dad was the local doctor and his patients often showed their gratitude by gifting delicious cookies and home brews. This year I'm trying out a few new recipes from Luisa Weiss's classic German baking. So far, the Vanillekipferl are a huge hit, as are the simple Christmas cookies. My mouth is watering just thinking about them, which is odd as I don't have much of a sweet tooth. I followed Luisa, aka the Wednesday Chef, on social media since reading her first book, My Berlin Kitchen, a few years ago, and then of course I had to buy her German baking book a couple of years after that. She even came to Austin on a book tour, and I turned total fangirl on her and couldn't stop talking after getting my autograph. Just like me, she is a multicultural girl, an American-Italian who grew up in Germany and, after a stint in the US, decided she wanted to make her home in Berlin. Her story resonates so much with me, as it's all about searching for home and identity. And the cakes in her book are amazing. And so far, I'm very happy with the Plätzchen. Of course, we also like to incorporate some English things into our Christmas prep. While nobody in this house likes the traditional English Christmas fruit cake, which resembles a German Stollen but is much more densely filled with alcohol-soaked sultanas and other shriveled-up things, we do appreciate a decent mince pie, which is like a tiny version of a pie. So you have the flaky crust and then filled with mincemeat, and mincemeat is like a alcohol-soaked mush of dried fruit and other things. So it just sounds disgusting, but it's absolutely delicious, and you actually can't just eat one. You have to eat at least 2 or 3 at a time. but decent mincemeat is hard to find outside of the UK, and we're too stingy to pay extra for the UK imported version. Our seasonal English favourite is definitely the sausage roll, and S has been busy making a whole stash of these lovelies, albeit with vegetarian sausage meat. The dog doesn't care and lives practically next to the fridge during the holiday season. We even got our tree up. It's not decorated yet, but I'm hopeful the decorating fairies will sweep in and do their magic before Christmas Eve. Currently, they seem to be too busy sleeping in, hanging out with their mates, and totally abusing my generous Christmas mood for endless Ubering to and from places. They still have approximately 24 hours, and I'm not really bothered that the tree isn't finished yet. Growing up in Germany, where many households wait until Christmas Eve to put up the tree and decorate it, I'm used to a little last-minute action, and actually rather like it like that. It makes it more special, and it's a nice touch for Christmas Eve. When to actually celebrate, i.e. rip open the presents, is always a little bit contentious in our household. I've long lost the battle of celebrating on Christmas Eve, as is tradition in Germany, although nobody is averse to opening a small gift or two. And so we usually follow the English-American way of celebrating on Christmas Day. Sometimes, though, I miss that special festive vibe, a little Besinnlichkeit on Christmas Eve. I remember being a little girl and waiting all day with my sister for Heiligabend, and that delicious sense of giddy anticipation. We'd spend the day decorating the tree, maybe seeing friends and watching Christmas specials on TV, and then we'd dress up a little, and when it got dark, we would listen out for the silvery tinkle of a tiny bell, the sign for us that Christkind had been, and we were allowed to burst into the living room, where our tree was waiting, lit by real candles, the obligatory bucket of water in the background. S nearly had a heart attack when he spent his first Christmas in Germany and saw fire danger everywhere. Oh, and yes, I grew up in the south of Germany, where it's not Santa or the Weihnachtsmann, the Christmas man, who brings the presents, but Christkind, traditionally a kind of reincarnation of the child Jesus. Being the agnostic that I was from an early age, in my mind it never had anything to do with Jesus, but was simply a dainty, golden-haired angel girl. When my children were little, they loved the idea of Christkind coming on Christmas Eve, and then high-fiving Santa on his way during the night. Best of both worlds, I guess. My husband and kids seem to prefer the more raucous, and to me, much less civilized English style. When the kids were little, I found it hard to sit around in the living room early on Christmas morning, bleary-eyed, just out of bed and in PJs, as it really took away that special Christmas Eve magic for me. But over the years, I've learned to go with the flow and just start drinking mid-morning, while all around me is a flurry of ripped paper and tangled ribbons and Christmas chaos. By the time the Christmas turkey is on the table, everybody is happily exhausted, mildly plastered, and very jolly indeed, especially after a very boozy Christmas pudding has been demolished. This is S's absolute favourite part of Christmas, a brown, brandy-soaked lump of Englishness, set alight at the table, and then served with cream or ice cream. Nobody else shares his enthusiasm for it, except for my mother, but we like the whole ceremony. After dinner, it's the custom to collapse in front of the TV. We usually give the Queen's speech a miss, as it's just not convenient timing here in the US. Maybe squeeze in a little walk to shift dinner, and then cobble together a sandwich with the leftovers before crashing into bed. Basically, the whole day is a blur of boozy cheerfulness, which is really rather nice, actually. Yeah, so that's what I wrote last year, and predictably, that seasonal yearning for Germany has found me again. And of course this year it's hitting harder than ever before because, well, of the year we've all had, it's been so horrendous on so many levels. Anyway, what makes a German Christmas so special? Why am I craving a German Christmas? I associate Christmas with childhood and all the memories around that time of year. And Christmas is such a big thing in Germany, and we don't have Thanksgiving, so all the build-up is for Christmas, and Advent is celebrated. There are so many traditions around that time of year. It just feels very special. What I really love about it is that while all the build up now these days is all kind of frenzied gift shopping and just getting everything done before the end of the year, the actual Christmas period and the time between Christmas and New Year's is meant for slowing down, and people usually do that to some extent. So we always have more time off. Obviously, Christmas Eve is the big one in Germany, and so while the shops are usually still open about for half the day, so it's not the whole day off, but at least half of the day. And then Christmas Day obviously is off, and then Boxing Day, the second Christmas Day, the 26th, is off too, and that's not the case here in the US. So unless your company shuts down for Christmas, which is also not very usual, it's back to work for Americans. So Christmas doesn't have that same slowing down effect. We even have a special term for it in German. Of course we do. We call that time between Christmas and New Year zwischen den Jahren, in between the years. So people will say to each other, hey, let's catch up when we're in between the years. And I really love that. And obviously, the weather in the Northern Hemisphere is usually terrible at that time of year, so we hardly ever get white Christmas anymore. It's just rainy and grey, same in the UK. So it's not that difficult to slow down and sleep and watch movies and eat lots of food and all that. And it's definitely a slower pace. One of the things that really remind me of childhood are Christmas songs and Christmas carols. And here in the US, obviously, we're bombarded with the kind of schmaltzy, Hollywoody Christmas songs like I'm Dreaming of a White Christmas and all that. And it all has its place, blaring out of every shop at this time of year. Even in Germany, I know that because, Germans, as so many others, are very eager adopters of American culture. So we're all very familiar with those songs. But the traditional German carols have a whole different feel. One of my favorite German Christmas carols is Es wird schon gleich dunkel, which means it will soon be dark. And this is actually an Austrian carol with its origins in the Tyrol region of Austria, which is really close to Bavaria. And I've said this before, the Christmas traditions I describe are mostly southern German and I feel culturally much closer to Austria than I do to northern or East Germany. And Krampus, for example, is one of those traditions. He's not really known in northern Germany. He has a different name. It's different. Just tradition is different. But Krampus is the way he's depicted as some kind of horned demon is a very southern thing and originated in the mountains. And yeah, Austrian, Swiss traditions even, I feel are more familiar to me. Now back to the song. And don't worry, I'm not going to sing it because, trust me, you don't want to hear me sing. But I thought I'd read you the lyrics just because it's so nice. And if you want to understand the lyrics, I have included a link in the show notes that includes the literal English translation. And of course, if you want to listen to the actual song, I've found a few versions on YouTube and I picked out a couple of them. One is a version sung by an a cappella group. It's actually really impressive. And the other one is a rendition by one of my favorite Austrian artists, Hubert von Geusern. It's not a very good recording. It's you can hear people in the audience coughing, but you'll get the idea. And it's just to give you an impression of what the song sounds like. But here are the lyrics. Es wird schon gleich dumper, es wird schon gleich Nacht. Drum komm ich zu dir her, mein Heiland auf d'Wacht. Will singen a Liedl, dem Liebling, dem Klein. Du magst ja nicht schlafen, ich hör dich nur warn. Hei, 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 schlaf süß, herzliebes Kind. So that was just the first verse because, oh my goodness, it's so difficult reading dialect. I haven't done that for such a long time, and yeah, it's a lot more tricky than you'd imagine. And for the Bavarian or Austrian purists out there, shh, that was hard. I did my best. and I enjoyed it too. Now I'm going to describe a typical Christmas Eve, the way my family celebrates it. Now, of course, I don't want to say it's a completely typical German Christmas Eve because every family has slight variations. And then the north of Germany, there are different traditions too. And also my family isn't religious. So we would never incorporate going to church on Christmas Eve the way other families would. Yeah, so I want to say it's a typical Christmas, but also not completely typical. Let's start with the morning of Christmas Eve. As I mentioned before, it's quite normal that the tree isn't actually up yet at this point. In my family, it was perfectly normal to wait until the day before Christmas Eve to get the tree. And I remember actually going into the woods and chopping down a tree a few times with my dad, which was always very special. And before you can accuse me of vandalizing the woods, I mentioned before that my dad was the local doctor and he had a lot of connections. So sometimes someone would sort us out with a tree. And other times we'd just go to the Christmas tree lot somewhere and then usually find the last few stragglers, which at times looked a bit sad and wonky. But that's how we did it. And sometimes we'd get the tree a week or so before Christmas, but it would never enter the house until Christmas Eve. That was the rule. And then it was my sister and my job to decorate it on Christmas Eve. Talking about decorations, those included real candles. No artificial lights in my family. And we just kept a bucket of water close by, but the candles were always real. Even when we were little and had cats and dogs running around. I have to admit that I broke that tradition in my own family as I find it far too stressful. I love real candles, absolutely love them, and I use them a lot, but not on the tree. Anyway, decorating the tree was a really good way of keeping us busy on Christmas Eve while we were waiting for Christkind. Remember that golden-haired angel bringing the presents in the evening? Not Santa, no, or Father Christmas, the British version. No, it was always Christkind. So once we'd decorated the tree, then my mum would send us out to play, or we'd just walk the dog, or if the weather was really bad, we'd just be inside and watch Christmas movies. And as we got older, we'd help her prepare Christmas dinner. Talking about Christmas movies, one of my favorites, an absolute classic, is an Eastern German Czech version of Cinderella. It's called Drei Haselnüsse für Aschenbrödel, 3 hazelnuts for Cinderella. And ask any German, especially any German woman or girl, and they will sing the theme tune, the opening melody. Of course, I've introduced this movie to my girls and they love it. Mission accomplished. Of course, it being December, the sun would go down around 4 p.m. And at this point, we would get really impatient. And I guess that's where church would have been useful. I know that's people go to Christmas Mass at around that time in the afternoon. There's another one at midnight. As I said, my family never went to church at Christmas. But that afternoon one, I think it's a really useful way of getting the family out of the house while Christkind comes. Because by the time you got back from church, the tree would be lit and waiting, and Christkind would have delivered all the presents. Magical. But we found it still magical without church, and we would spend time getting dressed up because that was very important too. We would pick out special outfits for Christmas, wear special jewelry, and our parents would dress up too. And I just remember that moment always when everyone was just had that extra sparkle, and so many memories, so special. And so to me, it's really difficult. The whole American British version of waking up in the morning and then opening presents, wearing pajamas and drinking coffee. It's just not the same for me. I just love that special Christmas Eve vibe. But back to Christkind. We didn't really care how Christkind delivered the presents. Obviously, we didn't have Santa coming down the chimney during the night. We didn't have to put food out for the reindeer and all that. But I don't think German children really care that much. I don't think we didn't have any problems imagining the process of bringing presents. That just happened by magic. So once the sun had gone down and we'd be dressed up, it was all about waiting for that special signal. And we'd be watching telly and have one ear cocked just in case we could hear Christkind. And then a sweet tingle of a bell. That was the signal, and we'd race into the living room to find the lights turned off and the tree resplendent with real candles burning and lots of presents spilling out from under it. Always such a magical moment. And there'd be music, usually something classical and festive. And because of the candlelight, everybody's eyes were extra shiny and sparkly, and I just can't describe it. It was just such a special moment, and I feel all warm and fuzzy when I think about that. Of course, when we were little children, that would be the moment to start opening presents, because you couldn't possibly keep little kids away from the presents. But as we got older, we'd just wait and enjoy that special moment a bit longer and eat dinner first. Of course, first we'd toast with champagne. In some families, you'd make music at this point or sing songs together. But yeah, we just listened to music and drank champagne and enjoyed being together and then sit down to dinner. Food would vary from year to year. I know some families are very traditional and always have the same thing for Christmas Eve. And sometimes it's something very simple like potato salad and Frankfurter sausages, something really basic. But we always liked to make something special, such as fondue of some kind, because that's something that we wouldn't normally have. Things like that. And sometimes we'd even have our big Christmas dinner, like the turkey, on Christmas Eve with, dumplings, potato dumplings and gravy and red cabbage, other vegetables, the full works, chestnut stuffing, all that kind of thing. But very often that would be the meal for Christmas Day, where you'd have other family over, and then we'd have something lighter on Christmas Eve. Fish, seafood is another favorite, or sometimes we would even have finger food because it would be much easier to eat that while opening presents. And then hours later, once we'd eaten all the food and drunk all the wine and opened all the presents, the little ones would go to bed, clutching their new favorite toy. Or sometimes they had to be picked up from under the Christmas tree where they'd fallen asleep. And then as we got older, we'd send the little ones to bed and our parents too, and we'd go out and see our friends for more drinks. And this tradition became even more special when I was in my 20s and I had moved away, and everybody had moved away or was abroad and would just be home for Christmas, and then we'd catch up because we hadn't seen each other for months. So yeah, I have a lot of special memories of Christmas Eve and that festive vibe. So Christmas Day was more about either it was the day to see extended family, so we'd either travel or have people join us and then have a big Christmas dinner that day. So that would be turkey, or traditionally it would be goose with all the trimmings, usually served as a late lunch. But some families I know use Christmas Day for traveling as well, and go on holiday maybe, because you'd already had all the festivities on Christmas Eve, and Christmas Day is usually a good time to travel. So we'd start Christmas Day by either, depending on our age and stage in life, we'd either be waking up and playing with our new toys or sleep off the hangover from the night before. And then we'd help make Christmas dinner. And so the second day of Christmas, the 26th of December, Boxing Day in the UK, was pretty much necessary recovery day, where we would recover from the excesses of the previous couple of days. And it's just always so nice to have that extra day off. Yeah, so that would be a typical Christmas Eve or Christmas period in Germany. And I hope I could convey some German Christmas spirit. Maybe you can understand now why I miss my German Christmas Eve. I really hope I can make it happen for 2021. I'm currently working on 3 more episodes that are waiting to be published. I've been so busy and so they're waiting, but I should be able to squeeze 1 more in before Christmas or before the end of the year, but you'll have to wait until the new year for the other 2, as I'm planning to actually really take some time off when I'm in between the years. Please also don't forget to maybe make a donation to Refugees International at ko-fi.com. I have included the link to my donation page in the show notes. I wish you all some end-of-year positivity, whether you celebrate Christmas or not, and whether you have time off work or not. I just hope you get some time to relax and look after yourself. And let's hope 2021 will be the beginning of better times. And in the meantime, as we say in Germany, Guten Rutsch, which means may you slide safely and happily into the new year. See you next time.